Welcome to She Sells Radio. My friend, we have a true powerhouse on the show today who's all about doing sales the right way, which I love, and which, if you've been in the She Sells community for any amount of time, you know that's what we're about here as well. And he's built a real mega brand in the sales space with close to 500,000 followers looking to him for sales training and advice every day. I'll tell you a little bit about him, and then we're going to get into some of his best sales tips. And I also want to find out more about how he's built his platform, because I know that you want influence like my guest today has. So John Barrows is the CEO of JB Sales, an organization focused on elevating the profession of sales through training, content, and events. They train some of the world's fastest growing sales teams like Salesforce.com, Zoom, and LinkedIn, while supporting a thriving community of over 50,000 individual sellers. That's a lot of people. And John's goal is to change the negative perception of sales and help sales professionals achieve success by doing it the right way, because he believes when sales is done right, it's one of the greatest professions in the world, but when done wrong, it's one of the worst. And to further support this goal and introduce sales as a career to the younger generations, he's also the proud author of an Amazon best-selling children's book called I Want to Be in Sales When I Grow Up, that he wrote with his daughter, which I absolutely love. John Barrows, welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Elyse. I appreciate it. And that hopefully I can live up to some of those expectations that you set there.
Gosh. Well, I loved our conversation. And this is, we'll see where we go today. I always like being free flowing, but I loved our conversation at the beginning about the anti-launch, right? Because you're launching a new website right now.
Yep.
I was like, we'll talk about it at the end, but to tell us a little bit about the anti-launch philosophy, because I actually think this speaks well to like your personality and what you're all about, and probably cues into some of the success that we can also we can learn from you.
Yeah, we've learned it over the years that, nobody cares that much, right? So about you, right? We all care a lot about what we're doing out there, and we think it's really important. But I've done too many of okay, let's create this awesome thing. Let's not tell anybody about it, and let's launch it to the world. And and all that excitement. Sometimes it goes great, but then other times it just falls flat, and it almost feels like everything that you put into it was almost meaningless or worthless, when it obviously wasn't. So we're the AntiLaunch Company. Anytime we launch something, we just like, you'll rarely hear me say, hey, I got a great new website coming out. I got this huge new thing and let's go for it. We'll just put it out there, and then we kind of evolve it. And as people explore and find more, and we get feedback. And it's also something about agile and kind of Six Sigma stuff, where we launch, get feedback, adjust, and keep iterating, as opposed to one huge launch of something that isn't going to move for another 2 years. So it aligns both of those philosophies there for us, and just a little bit of humility as well.
I love it. And it helps to take some of the pressure off, which no doubt we'll kind of talk today about sales and pressure and how all that works. But here's what I want to know first is, when I was prepping for this and just reading about you writing the book with your daughter, I Want to Be in Sales When I Grow Up, I thought, oh my gosh, how cool on multiple fronts, to be inspiring young ones we've got a 2-year-old, and it's like, whatever he wants to do is great. But if he wants to go into sales like mom and do that, I'm going to be so supportive. So inspiring young ones to do that, but then also to do that with your daughter. So tell me a little bit about what inspired that, and then how was the process of writing it along with your daughter?
Yeah, it was probably one of the more fulfilling things I've done in my career. It was so for the past 15 years I've been building this company, and for the majority of it before COVID, it was me on an airplane, flying I'm about 2 million miles in about 10 years. And so and my daughter's 11. So I was a weekend dad for the most part. I always committed to not traveling on the weekends, but I would leave on a Monday, I'd come back on a Friday, and I'd try to be as present as possible over the weekends. But also what I realized, so one was I wanted to get her a little bit more involved to understand what I did and why I was doing it. Two was, when you're a parent, and you try to, kids understand what doctors are, what lawyers are, because they see them on TV and they're very tangible. It's like, okay, that's what that person does. But when you tell your kid you're in sales, they kind of look at you sideways, like, well, what do you mean by that? Do you just talk to people all day long? And it's kind of hard to. So the basis of it was really trying to make a deeper connection with my daughter and have her understand. But then she started selling Girl Scout cookies. So she was about 6 years old, and she came to me and she said, Daddy, I can sell Girl Scout cookies with this link that I have. And I know you have a really strong social media following. So could you put this out on your link, and so people can buy Girl Scout cookies from me? And I was like, no. And she's like, what, why not? I'm like, well, first of all, that's my audience and I work my ass off to build it.
Yeah.
I go, and second of all, why should they buy from you over every other kid that's selling Girl Scout
Oh,
cookies,
this is
right?
hardcore sales training right off the
I mean,
bat.
straight
Yeah.
up. And so she goes, well, what do I need to do? I was like, well, you need to put together a little pitch, like a little why buy from you. And so we practiced this little, and if you go to I want to be in sales when I grow up.com, you'll see there's a video of her with this little big afro on because she was nervous. And so she went and got a costume and she gives
Oh,
her pitch of why she likes lemonade, like her favorite cookies and why. And so I did a blog post on that, put the link there, got her to be the top selling,
wow.
Girl Scout in the town. And then the following year, we went door to door because I was teaching door to door sales, right? And rejection and objection handling. So we did a little video on how to handle objections,
Yeah.
wrote a blog post on that. And then after that, I was like, you know what? This is a cool journey. And we ended up writing a book together.
Hmm.
And it was her journey on selling Girl Scout cookies, but with the realization of really ultimately what sales is. And
Wow.
it's not about convincing somebody of something. It's helping people solve problems or solve challenges or achieve goals, right?
Hmm.
And you have to know your audience and you have to, all these different things about it. And the three main goals of the book is one is to elevate the profession, right? Because no kid ever says that. No kid had ever said, it's always the default profession. Sales is the default profession. So if you introduce to kids early that it could be something you could be proud of, they might think of it as a profession.
Hmm.
Two is I wanted to get more women into sales because I think women are some of the best sales professionals I've ever come across in my entire life. And I wanted to encourage more young girls to think of sales as a career.
Hmm.
And then the third one is to give back because my daughter does not want to be in sales when she grows up. She actually wants to be a veterinarian.
Oh,
And
I love
so
it.
100% of the profits go to her favorite charity, which is the World Wildlife Fund. So we don't make
Ah,
a dime on it. And last year we were able to give a check for $25,000 to the World
wow.
Wildlife Fund, which was pretty cool. So
That's so awesome.
it's been a fun experience all the way around.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that. Well, and I appreciate what you said too about, women being great salespeople. And we've got a mixed audience here, I always say, because I want to honor, acknowledge everyone
Yeah.
who's listening. And when I have, when I have men on the show, I always like to ask, like, what have you learned from your wife, your daughter, et cetera, about selling? I'd love to know, because I also know, like, on your team, some of the heads of sales are
Yeah.
women.
All women.
Yeah, it's all women, right? So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from you, like, from your daughter and from the women in your life, what have you learned about sales that maybe helped you shift your approach and has made you a better person?
I mean, I think the obvious one is empathy and listening, right?
Yeah.
I think there's just inherently women are more empathetic and they listen more than men do.
Mm.
We're just based on how we're taught as kids to be out there and but what I've actually learned more was in diving into women in sales is how many more women should be in sales but are not prevented from being in sales but are discouraged from being in sales because of the male dominant drive, the perception of what sales is, of
Mm.
like go go go, hit the gong, let's go to the strip clubs, let's celebrate, let's do all this stuff. And it's celebrated as males, right? What I realized was I've always thought I was a pretty empathetic man growing up. I think my mom did a pretty good job raising me. But then when I had my daughter, I was like, holy shit, wait a minute, how we're marketed to, how we're presented, and the opportunities given to us. And then there was one that really struck me, and your listeners can check this one out. Um, I don't know, and I usually don't like calling people out, but I will on this one. I went to a conference and it was Drift, did their
Mm.
conference, and Grant Cardone got up and did his speech.
Yeah.
And he came out and he started talking about his wife in ways that I couldn't. I mean, I think he's a terrible sales leader in the
Mm.
first place. He's like all about hit the list and Glengarry Glen Ross type approach to selling. But he said, he was after he did his dumb speech, he's like, hey, honey, stand up, look at, and in front of 5,000 people, he's like, look at her. And he started talking to her as that and this, and
Mm.
like, I own that. And started talking, I mean, literally what he was going to do to her on his flight on the way out of the conference. And I
Wow.
almost like, I was so dumbfounded. And
Ugh.
my good friend Trish Bertuzzi was sitting next to me and she smacks me and she's like, are you listening to this? And I'm like, what the and I couldn't put it into words. And
Yeah.
so I got on after trying to collect myself and almost jumping up on stage and trying to kick the shit out of him,
Yeah.
which is another negative male approach to things. But I remember just grabbing my phone and doing a video and just lighting off and saying, guys, we need to cut this shit here. This
Wow.
whole bro culture in sales needs to stop. And the post went viral. It cut. The CEO at Drift reached out and apologized to everybody who was on the post. And it led
Mm.
to this beautiful conversation with myself, Trish Bertuzzi, Lori Richardson, and Casey Jones, three women who I highly respect in sales and business. And it was called We Need to Talk. And
Mm.
it was this whole concept of really the danger and the harm that the bro culture brings to sales, and how it's not inclusive in any way, shape, or form. And what I learned from them, to get back to your point, was I didn't just learn from them, but I learned from the audience. We did the survey on, hey, we're not going to preach at you here. Like, generic survey here. What is one thing that you're afraid to ask? So just fill in this sheet. Like, what's one thing you're afraid to ask because you don't want to ask it at work? What's one scenario you face that is sexist, that's not an obvious thing? And then what's one solution that you've seen work, right?
Mm.
And what struck me was all the little things. It wasn't the overt sexism, right? It was the little small things that happen every single day. And that the women were like, look, if I complained about every sexist, stupid thing that happened to me here, I would be labeled as a complainer. But the
Mm.
problem is all these little things build up. And then I light off on, like, I lose it about something that tipped the scale, in, even though that thing might have been rather minor by itself. And now all of a sudden I'm I'm an issue and all this other stuff. She's like, so the women were like, there's really, it's, I'm in a no-win situation, and reflecting on watching my wife and run her business and the opportunities she's been given and how she's been spoken to by men, and then seeing my daughter and some of the things she's going through in school, and how the boys, right, like all of that has opened my eyes wider than they've ever been about
Mm.
the challenges, but also the opportunities. Because the best, I mean, I've created, I've run about three sales teams here, and the more diverse sales teams are always the best ones. The
Yeah.
ones that come from different perspectives are always the best ones, and we can learn from each other. I don't care what level you're at or how quote unquote, bro or hardcore you are. If you don't have that softer side, if you don't have that empathy, you might win in the short term, but long term, it ain't gonna work. So
Gosh. Wow. Oh my gosh. It's so crazy when you talk about that, John. It's like that is happening every day, like still. I mean,
yeah.
it's wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm curious from your own journey, because I know you've done everything from doing 400 cold calls a day when you
Yep.
were
Yep.
inside
A
sales
week. No, a week. I
a
wasn't that
week.
bad. It was
Okay. I
400
was like,
because I was also
okay. All
selling.
right.
I also had
Woo.
to be out there selling.
I
So
thought,
400
oh
a
my
week. Yeah.
gosh, that sounds absolutely just miserable.
Yeah.
But still, 400 a week is a lot. And then you've
Yeah.
also been VP of sales for startups, and obviously you've launched your own company. How
Yeah.
much of kind of that, gosh, like wanting to shift the culture,
Mhm.
and how much of that has inspired your own company and your training style and what you do now? And I'd love if you could go into a little more of what you say, which is like, when sales is done right, it's the best profession. When it's done worse, it's the worst profession. I'd love to
Yeah.
hear more about that.
Yeah, I realized a long time ago the perception that sales has and why it has the perception that it does. And this isn't a male female thing. This is just a reality thing. Is that
Yeah.
most of us get out of school, right? Well, we get, I think it's ridiculous to ask an 18-year-old kid what they want to be for the rest of their life, first of all, right? I think college is a great social education. It's a terrible actual education. But so we get
Agree.
out into the real world, and like me, we realize either A, I don't like whatever this is, or B, I can't make enough money doing it. So hey, no barrier to entry, let me get into sales. And so we're given, you take a rather normal kid, okay, who's ethical and all that stuff, okay, and you put them in a scenario where you give them a territory and a quota, and you tell them, hey, good luck. And oh, and by the way, if you don't hit your quota, you're probably going to get fired and you won't be able to put food on your table in the next 3 months. So good luck, right? Well, that normal kid is going to do some very abnormal things, right? They're going to lie,
Mm.
cheat, and steal to get their numbers, and even though they would never otherwise. And so
Yeah.
I think, my empathy, if you will, for that scenario, for kids being put in that scenario and being thrown to the wolves in a lot of ways, like I was, has given me the perspective to say, hey, how can I help skip a few steps, right? So that was just in general, and that's why I kind of, part of the reason I do what I do. But then, as I grew and followed the typical sales, build, grow, competition, hiring athletes. I mean, that was just what I knew, right? And I was an athlete. I mean, I wasn't a good athlete, but I was an athlete. So, I thought teamwork. I didn't think of it as a male female thing. I thought, oh, teamwork. That's a good thing, right?
Mhm.
But then I started being exposed to people like Lori Richardson and Trish
Mm.
Bertuzzi, and having these conversations and realizing how skewed everything was. And even how we write our job descriptions and the words that we use. And so that all, I think, micro-wise built up for me and said, okay, there's an issue here that needs to be addressed, just from a more inclusive standpoint. And I don't mean just women too. I mean LGBTQ. I mean,
Mm.
bring it on as far as anybody other than a pale white male like me. You know what I mean? And so with the training, we try to be as inclusive as possible for people that care. And this is where the
Mm.
delineation is. I do discriminate, but
Mhm.
not about something you can't control. I discriminate based on people who actually give a shit. Because if you actually care, I'm here for you. I don't care what color, I don't care where you fall on what spectrum, I'm here for you. But if you don't care, I could care less about what, you know what I mean? I'm not going to
Yeah.
give you information if you don't care to take it and run with it. And so it's shaped a lot of our approach, to be way more inclusive, to hire from different angles, to bring different perspectives in, and also to de try to do what we can to fight against the Glenn Rosses of the
Yeah.
world, fight against the Wolf of Wall Streets of the world, fight against the Grant Cardones of the world, who unfortunately are 10, 20, 30x more popular in a lot of ways, just because it fits the Lambos and the everything else that you can get for doing all this stuff. But that to me isn't fulfilling, right?
Mm.
I know plenty of millionaires who are just miserable bastards. To me, the guide of success, or the goal of success, is happiness, period.
Oh, amen.
And my daughter, when people ask her, I told her this early, I'm like, anybody ever asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up, the answer to that question is very simple, and the answer is happy, period.
Oh, I
And
love that.
so sales, I believe, is a career that can really help people achieve that, whatever level of happiness is for them. I mean, for instance, you speak about the three women that I have three women trainers. They're all women. And I used to have this different profile of like a brand and somebody who's like, was going to on their way up, and I was going to all this other stuff. And what I realized is the women that I work with what they're looking for is a solid work-life balance, because especially now that they're home and their kids are in school, they're juggling a
Yeah.
million different things. So a 9 to 5 is just not feasible in so many
Yeah.
ways. So putting them in a position to do what they love, but with a flexible structure to get it done without having to worry about checking off box. I mean, I'm about the least micromanager you'll ever come across, because I'm
Mm.
just like, as long as you get your shit done, I don't care when you work. And so I think what I've realized about sales is it provides such an opportunity for underprivileged or underserviced groups to excel. Because what
Mm.
other career, the harder you work, the more you get paid? What other career has the flexibility? Whatever other career is, I don't want to say recession proof, but kind of is, in the
Yeah.
sense that, say the recession hits your industry harder than most, well, then you can just go sell for another industry that's hotter right now.
Mm.
So it's the most portable profession. It's the most flexible profession. It's the most economically advanced profession. And women could be the number one benefactors of that if we just give them a chance.
Oh my gosh. Amen to everything you just said. There's so much. And there's, I think, two things that I want to just reflect on. I mean, one is just, shifting the language in
Mm.
sales. And I've even found myself like feeling like I have to use words like hustle or crush your
Crush.
goal, crush.
Yeah.
And this makes me laugh. One of my mentors has been saying this lately, and it just cracks me up. She's like, the only thing we're going to go crush is a tomato. Like, let's just get it clear. The only thing we're going to crush is a tomato. Like,
Yep.
thank you for helping us all shift the usage of that word, because it's
Yeah.
so overused, but it's like, it's what people know. And
Yep.
so starting to shift the conversation. And then two, I think shifting the expectation about happiness is success. I
Yes.
love that. I love that so much. I really have I've had some things happen in my own life over the past few years where it's like I started to really get clear on what success really is for me. And at the end of the day, it's
Mhm.
happiness. And
Agreed.
um, so I love that. I love that. You said something recently, and I think it was on your LinkedIn, but or actually, no, I'm sorry, it was on your YouTube, on your channel trailer, which by the way, go check out John's YouTube. We'll put all the links in the
Thanks.
show notes because it's really good content. But just asking that question that I think is helpful for all of us to be asking right now. And it's not from a place of pressure, but it's from a place of how can I keep upping my game, which is like, what can I do right now that a computer can't? Right. So
Yeah, agreed.
evaluating what can I do that a computer can't. I would love if you could speak to that, and how do you use that to teach sales, and how do you use that in your own company to help to keep up leveling what you're doing?
Yeah, this is a tough one in a lot of ways because that question is getting really hard to answer these
I
days.
know, right?
I mean, I'm seeing
Yeah.
emails written by artificial intelligence that are better than more personalized than I would ever write.
Yeah.
I came across this website recently where you can choose a person, like, it'd be your image, right? Or my
Mhm.
image. And you can then in the background type, and it gets you to say exactly what I'm typing, and it looks 100% real, but it's not. So it's deep
Wow.
fake, all that stuff.
That's scary.
And this is something I actually asked Gary Vaynerchuk back in 2017, 2018, when I went to his 4D session, because I
Mm.
saw that email the first time and I was like, oh my God, Gary, where does that leave us? Right.
Wow.
As
Yeah.
if computers can write emails better than this. And he said, don't worry about that. He's like, don't fight the technology, right? Leverage it. And so it's almost like I feel like we're in the, back in the 50s or 40s or whatever, whenever manufacturing was huge, right? And there was
Yeah.
those people on the manufacturing line that were stamping out widgets, and they were like, "Oh, I'm the best widget stamper on the planet. Like, there's no way technology can do what I do, right?" And
Mm.
then, now all of a sudden you're irrelevant. Well, all these kids who are out there right now push and play on cadences, or sequences, or making generic cold calls and just go and literally just going through the motions.
Yeah.
Like, I can do that far better with technology than any rep ever could. Because
Mm.
if a rep is gonna, like, I scare teams a lot, because I'll walk in and I'll say, hey, if I was a new VP of sales in this organization, what the first thing that I would do is I would ask to see every single email that went out right now by an SDR or a BDR. And if they were all templated bullshit emails, I would be like, you know what? I'm going to save this company a whole lot of money. I'm going to fire every single one of you right now. I'm going to hire a marketing ops person and just go to the boards with Marketo, Pardot, Eloqua, pick one of
Mm.
those, because I can do it 1,000 times better. If it's all it is a spam engine, basically, I can do it a
Yeah.
1,000 times better with a marketing tool, because I'm going to look at the analytics and I'm going to make adjustments along the way, which reps never will. Demos, you have reps literally droning through demos because they got badged in boot camp for it, and that's how they should
Yeah.
do it. So they ask their crappy questions, their qualifying BANT questions or medic questions or whatever the hell they want to ask, and then they do some hard shift into some pitch that just drones through the entire presentation and doesn't take into any context what the client told them.
Mm.
All that is getting erased now, if it's not already erased. I mean, I fear that we're in this 5-year transition right now where we are doing what the machines, or we're teaching the machines how to do our job. And
Mm.
there's going to be a vast majority of sales professionals that, I don't want to say it's going to go away, but are going to get rolled up under like marketing and operations and be more salaried positions than commission-based stuff to go out there. And so I personally think we're moving back to full cycle sales, because I don't think that sales reps like the SaaS model of predictable revenue, where you segment roles and you have to talk to 5 people before you actually talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Mm.
And I just think it's incumbent upon us to really think that through, as like, are these activities something that a computer could do?
Yeah.
And the last point I'll make on that is the way I've been able to kind of help people align sales and marketing is again, I kind of stole this from Gary. He said, everybody talks about content is king. He says, fine. He said, content is king or queen. He goes, fine. If content is king or queen, then context is God.
Mm.
And that to me is marketing and sales. Marketing is content. Sales is context. If we as sales professionals are not putting any context around our content, then we're no different than marketing. And why are we getting paid to do what we do?
Mm.
So context is taking that marketing material that marketing came up with, and before it hits your inbox, me putting a little flavor on top about why I think it's important to you, right? Taking that 30 slides in a slide deck and having a conversation with a client, and then cutting it down to the 5 or 10 that are most relevant to them.
Mm.
Like that context, that until computers buy from computers, look, when computers buy from computers, we're screwed, period.
I
But
just
as long
started
as
thinking
there's,
about that. I was like, I've never thought about that. Yeah. Okay.
that's the scarier part to me, is
Yeah.
when not when computers sell, it's when computers start to buy, right?
Mm.
That's where it's like, holy shit, we're in trouble here.
Mm.
But until that happens, until there's a human on the other end of that, there's always going to be that need for that human touch. There's always going to be that need for that rounding of the edges, if you will, that technology just won't be able to connect with. And also the face-to-face and the phone and the voice and those type of things. That's why they're becoming more important than ever than email and anything else.
Mm. What are a few ways? So thinking about the context piece, and I'm also thinking about, for some of our listeners are entrepreneurs. We've got
Yeah.
quite a few sales reps too, who are maybe being told like, this is the message you have to send. This is, it's like cookie cutter, right? And so part of it, I think, comes down to leadership.
Oh, 100%.
It all comes down to leadership. But if someone's listening to this and they're like, yeah, I am sending messages that a computer could send way better. Like, what are a few simple ways we can seek to create greater connection and intentionality, and create better context with the messaging?
Well, I'm going to do a macro and then a micro.
I love it. Let's do it. Yeah.
The macro is really take a step back in your own career and go through something that I just reset on myself, which is your why and your values. Take a step back, because the company that you're working at right now might not be the company that you should be working at right now.
Yeah.
If you are in a high volume, don't give a shit about the client, get the numbers out there, $50. Look, and by the way, that might align with your values. I'm not saying it doesn't, right? I mean, one of your values might be money, like, right? I need money so I can do this thing. So I'm going to get this job that allows me to do these things to whatever else. And so that's fine. I'm not judging against that. But if you're sitting there struggling because your company is forcing you to send out a lot of these emails and management isn't listening to you as far as the results aren't, and you're getting pushed to do stuff that you just don't feel right about, and they're not open to dialogue around how to change that, you might want to just reassess what's important to you. Yeah. Going back to success, we need to reset our definition of what success is. I think we need to reset on our why. Why do we do what we do? And what are our core values? Because once you have those lined up, you have a decision stack that you can put up against almost anything when you're looking to make a decision, whether, career, a way to, talk to your managers about something, whatever it is, and you can have comfort in doing it once you are really solid on those. So first and foremost, I would say reassess. But if you're in the situation where you're like, look, the market's bad right now, we're going into a down economy, I don't want to risk my life, I still do my career, but I just don't, then let's do your side hustle. All right. What I really encourage against is just bitching about the fact that you're making 50 dials and this doesn't work. Okay. Because look, as a manager, you bring up $400 a week. I knew my equation cold when I was 23 years old. And I knew one thing. I knew I wasn't the smartest kid in the room, but I knew I could outwork you. And so to me, sales was a pure numbers game back then. Okay. It was $400, like it was $1,600 a month, got me 8 meetings a month. Got me four proposals, got me 2 pieces of closed business, and average deal size was $3,500. So that was my equation. So I just ran it, right? And I would make 400 dials, and it worked for me, $400 a week. And then when I hired people, it was make $400 a week. And because the key here is when you start, as a manager, I don't know what to work on you with, right? So, and there's 2 big levers I can pull. One's quality and one's quantity. Quantity one is, can you do the work? Like, can you do what I tell you to do, right? And that's the easier one for me to figure out. And that's why managers are lazy in a lot of ways, because that's how they manage. Yeah. We all know that quality is the answer, but quality is really hard to coach to, especially if you got 5, 6, 7, 8 reps, right? How do you coach quality in that while still maybe being a player coach and all that? Quantity is actually easy. It's like, did you make your 50 dials today? Yes, no, whatever. So, but for me, that's necessary in the first month or 2. I just want to see, can you do the effort, right? I'm going to give you a shitty set of leads and I'm going to make your phone calls, whatever. But as soon as you check off that box that says you can do that, yes, you put the effort in and your results aren't there. Well, now I can work on the quality side of the house and I can peel back. But some managers don't get out of that. I mean, one of the biggest things, one of the worst things I saw was when COVID hit, pipelines dried up, everything went dark. I mean, executives were doubling down on activities. I mean, executives didn't want to talk to an SDR or BDR, in a good economy. You think they wanted to talk to them now in a shitty economy by doubling down? No, we should have flipped that totally on its head. And so without the organization realizing that and continuing on this old playbook of hit the list and do your thing, whatever, do your side hustle. Don't bitch about it. Do your job, because I'm not going to listen to you unless you do your job first. I don't care how bad you think my advice on doing your job is. Well, so do that. Okay. But then do a side hustle. And if you think quality is better, well, then take 10 clients that you're trying to get in touch with. Okay. Like 10 tier 1 clients, and off hours. And I hate to say it, but you might have to work a little bit past 5 fucking o'clock these days, kids. And you know, you actually go off and you say, hey, let me just spend some time thinking about these prospects, like doing some research on them, making genuine connections, connecting with them on LinkedIn, having real purpose behind why I'm calling you. And then at the end of the month or whatever, however many you choose, maybe it's just one a day, by the way. Maybe it's one account a day, which is what I do. 30 minutes once a day. I pick one account and I go all in, and I come up with a 5, 6, 7 touch routine to them. And I do that once a day. So that's once a day, 5 days a week. That's 20 accounts. By the end of that month, you should be able to look at those 20 accounts and see how many meetings did you get? How many conversations did you have? What's that conversion ratio? Then go to your manager and say, hey, boss, I just ran a little experiment. This was off hours. It didn't take up any time that I was working on. And I did your approach. I made 50 dials a day, and this is what my results were, and boom, boom. But off hours, I picked one account a day, and I went through after 20 accounts, and I took a really thoughtful, very targeted approach, and look at the results here. And if the results are better, and your manager doesn't say, holy smokes, like, yeah, great job, like, let's do it that way instead. If they don't, that's when you know you should find another job. Right. So I think you know, pull the side hustle, but come to me with facts, come to me with data, because I don't care. And I know this is going to sound harsh, but managers do not care about our opinions. I do not care what you think about what I want you to do. You are an employee here at my company. Do what I'm telling you to do. Yeah. But if you can come back to me with data that says what I'm telling you to do is worse than what you're suggesting we do, if I'm not listening, I'm a terrible manager. I'm a terrible leader, and you probably shouldn't work for me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. It brings me back to some of my my corporate sales days and taking a similar approach. And it's like, but I like how you can see both sides of the perspective there, and it works for the manager, it works for the rep. So two questions. This is amazing. Yeah. We could go all day. This is awesome. I love it. So 2 questions for you, just to honor the time we have. One, and I know you're not going to be able to get really deep into it, but I would love if you can give us like 1 to 2 of your top tips for platform building. You've built a big online platform. You're not a hype guy, right? From what which I so appreciate. So it's like, it's not that, right? You're real, you're honest, you're authentic. So what are like 1 or 2 of the things that you would say have been the most impactful for you in terms of building your platform?
You know, I think authenticity and not caring about the numbers, and also knowing your audience, right? Like I when I went off on my own with Jay Barrows or with JB Sales, I went kicking and screaming. I did not want to build me because I had gone from Basho, which was the training company, and then we split off with another one of the senior trainers after they fired everybody and started Kensei Partners, another Japanese iterative. And then when I decided I wanted to go off on my own, I thought, oh, I got to stay on the Japanese theme so I can take advantage of it. But I got so much advice from people saying, no, if you're going to go into this space, John, you got to brand yourself, right? Because especially in the sales world, but more often in most world right now, you know, it's about 50% the content and what you do, and 50% who delivers it and who you are. And people are looking for purpose. People are looking to connect with people who they resonate with, right? I mean, there's so many false, you know, Instagram fake whatever's out there that people are craving authenticity. People are craving somebody to believe in and follow in a lot of ways that align with their values. So I think one of the things I would do is really just understand what I would, if I would back into it, you know, go back to your why and your values, like start there and then scream about them. Scream about them. And I mean this for companies, individuals, because that's what people are looking for right now. They're looking for attachment to something that they can believe in, people they can believe in, right? And look, you're not for everybody. And so, but if you nail down your values and your why, and you speak about them to anybody and everybody, you put them on your website, you live those values, then guess what? You're going to attract people that share those values. And without that, you can buy followers anytime you want, right? Yeah. So, because when I went off on my own, people were like, oh, John, give me your Twitter handle. We'll get you 10,000 Twitter followers in less than a month. And I'm like, why the hell do I want 10,000 random ass people follow me on Twitter? I'm like, I don't want that. I want authentic. Yeah. And I go by the Gary Vee one of like, I'd rather have 10 people following me on Twitter, and when I tweet something, 10 people do something, versus 10,000 people and nobody does anything. So I think quality over quantity, going back to that part of the conversation, don't get enamored with the likes and the, and what you're posting, and, this post versus the algorithms are going to change all over the place. So don't even try, just be you. It'll take a lot longer to get there, but the people that are attracted to you for you and your authentic self, you're going to be going back to the definition of success. It's not that you got 1 million followers. It's not that you got 500,000 LinkedIn people looking at you, right? It's that you got the people who want you should be following you, and you make a difference for them. Right. And I'll leave with this, people, my brother-in-law, my wife's youngest brother, this was back when Snapchat first hit, right? And I was just getting into Snapchat, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing on Snapchat, but I don't know, figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And I talked to him, and he was, at the time he was like 24, 25, and he was really trying to find his way. And he went to school for being a psychologist, but never was practicing. He was now death metal. He actually found death metal, and it was great. But the problem is like, he was a tiny kid. He had some birth defects. And so he got picked on quite a bit when he was in school. So that's why he wanted to go into psychiatry, because he wanted to help other people out. But now he found death metal, and whatever you think of it, he found it and he loved it. And all of a sudden you see this kid blossom. But what he was trying to do is make a career out of this. Okay. Of being a death metal, but he had to pay the bills. Death metal doesn't obviously pay the bills, right? And so I'm like, Michael, you need to start sharing your story on Snapchat or anyone. And he's like, John, why? Like, nobody will follow me. And I said, look, let me ask you this. You went to school for psychology, right? And he goes, yeah. I go, are you using that degree in any way, shape, or form right now? He goes, no. I go, okay. So now say you start a Snapchat channel or whatever, and one kid, a Michael Meehan from 10 years ago, who was struggling in high school, getting picked on by, somehow stumbles across your feed in Snapchat and sees, and you're telling the story of how you were him, and this is where you are and how happy you are right now and how you're figuring it out. And it makes a difference in that one kid's life. You have one follower. It's that one kid who you make a difference to, because he sees himself, and instead of committing suicide, or instead of, thinking how horrible he is, he says, maybe, just maybe, I could be somebody like that kid. I go, if that would have happened and you only had one follower, would it make your 4-year degree in psychology worth it? Wow. And he goes, yes. I said, then fucking tell your story, man. And that's the same thing with a platform. Don't do it to build a platform. If you're anybody who starts a business to become I always love people who say, oh, I'm going to start this business, and then, in 3 years, I'm going to sell it. If you start a business with the end in mind, I think you're doing it for the wrong reasons, right? You start a business because you love what you do. I say this all the time, that sales is the transfer of enthusiasm. That's what it is, right? People buy on emotion. They back it up with fact. It's still true to this day. And so that emotion, that right, that passion, if you can hone that into what you love to do and then get that across to other people, then you will attract the right people. And those right people will attract more right people. And then you will have a community that is engaged as opposed to a number. And that's what I think is the most important thing, is that you're making a difference because you're being you, and you're not, this person on Instagram and this person on Facebook, or this person on LinkedIn and this person someplace else, because you got to be. I mean, one of the things that really kills me is, let's go back to the women thing, and is, the algorithm messes up everything, right? Because you got a woman who is really strong at, whatever it is, okay? Like they're really thought leader in this area. And then one day, and they're posting stuff on LinkedIn and whatever it is, and Instagram, and they get a few likes here or there. And then one day they do a tip, and it happens to be in their bathing suit while they're on vacation. And that fucking post goes viral. And it wasn't because of the content, it was because of what they were wearing, and all that. And so now all of a sudden we're tricking ourselves in this mindset. Oh, well, shoot, I have to do less of that and more of this, because that's what's going to get me the followers. And that's what kills creativity. Do this for you, and do this to share your journey and your knowledge with other people who care. And the followers will come. It'll take longer. It'll take longer to get there. I am not Grant Cardone. I don't have multi-millions of followers. I do not have, and by the way, and I don't have a Lear jet, and I don't have 5 Lambos in my garage. But guess what? I live in a nice 3,000 square foot house at the end of a dead end street, 10 miles north of Boston, with a wife and a daughter. And I am very happy with my situation. And, and I only have X amount of users. I only have, which is a lot compared to some others, but not compared to the masses. And so I think that's it. Just be true to yourself. go find your voice by understanding your why and your values, and the people that that you want to attract will come.
Oh my gosh. Pure gold, pure gold. Thank you. I actually have two final questions. One's going to be
Sure.
super quick, and then we have
All
one
right.
final one. We're
Yep.
gonna get this done in
No
time.
problem.
It's so powerful. So John, tell everyone where they can connect with you. Tell them, I know we talked about anti-launch at the
Sure.
beginning. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're gonna go
Yeah.
anti the anti-launch and promote your new website a little
I
bit.
appreciate that.
Tell them where they
Yeah.
can connect with you, because I can tell you right now they're gonna want to. I can't wait to dive into more of your content. This is so
I
powerful.
appreciate that. So LinkedIn's the easy one. John Barrows. I think it's LinkedIn/John Barrows. I was one of the first 10,000 members on LinkedIn. So
Awesome.
that's why I got so many followers, not because I'm that popular, but
But the
uh,
content is great. Either way, the content
thank
is great.
you.
Go connect with John there.
And
Yeah.
then we're launching my website recently coming up here. So it's John M as in Michael Barrows, BARROWS.com. And that's actually my handle on Instagram and Twitter and all the other places too. So you can go check out, and we got a ton of free content out there, and I'm happy to chat with anybody. I do a ton of free consulting on Instagram too. So if
Mm,
anybody ever has a question or about sales, business, entrepreneurship, you can hit me up on Instagram. I'll get back to you almost immediately.
awesome. Awesome. Final question for you. And it's so interesting. I usually ask guests about, like, what's the advice you would have given to your younger self? But I just,
Mhm.
as you've been talking, I felt so called to talk about what's next for you and the future for
Mm.
you. And I know you said you've been leaning into your why and your core values. And so I
Yeah.
would love if you just share, what's one core value that you really unearthed recently that you're super excited to lean into in the future?
Yeah. So it's funny. I've always I read Think and Grow Rich a long time ago. So I had 12
Yeah.
personal guidelines to success, and then I kind of morphed that into my guidelines and stuff. But I really reset recently, and I was going through this exercise with my business coach, and there's all these descriptions of values, and you kind of choose the ones you like and you whittle it down and everything else. But one that I asked him, it was family was on there, and I was like, well, isn't that kind of like a default that family is always number one? Isn't like, so do I need to put it on there? And he goes, oh, absolutely you do.
Mm,
Because if you don't, you can fool yourself quite a bit. And I'll give you an example. I told you I have 2 million miles, 10 years, right, for my daughter. And I was convincing myself that I was doing that for my family because
mm,
financially, I wanted us to be financially secure. I wanted her to be able to go to college. But if I really look at it,
yeah.
I was probably doing it for myself because I was really good at it. And
Mm.
you know what I mean? And
I
it fed my
appreciate the
ego.
honesty. Yeah,
It fed
totally.
my ego to fly all around the world, to be going to Japan and all these cool
Sure.
places, and also being the number one revenue generator for the company. So as much as I pretended like it was about family and securing my family, it wasn't.
Mm,
Resetting, I did this for both for myself and my company. And we reset our company why and our company values, and family is number one. And
wow.
what it couldn't be more obvious to me, and more appreciative that it is number one at this point because of what I went through a year and a half ago when my dad passed away.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to get through it without family. And I don't mean blood, right? I mean family, people you consider family, loyalty, whatever you define that as. I mean, my company saved me because
Mm,
I was able to take a month off and be with my mom and be with my sister and be there for my dad on his last few days. Recently, my chief growth officer, his son, 4-year-old son, got diagnosed with diabetes, type 1
mm,
diabetes. And it threw him for a loop. And we were able to, as a business, because profits aren't our number one priority, and
yeah.
growth isn't the number one thing, and I don't have VC funding and pushing down my back. He was able to take time and deal with this shit.
Mm,
Now one of my trainers, she's going through some challenges as well. And so to me, I think just the resetting of that and the clarifying of that, I'm eager to lean into that because I believe that it's gonna be the catalyst to our growth moving forward here. Not just as a nice little thing that we put up on the walls, but the appreciation I've had. My employees, some of my favorite feedback I've gotten from people recently is, I'm a better person because I work here. I'm a better husband or wife because, I'm a better parent. We have a better relationship with my significant other
mm,
because of the what we've put together here and how we've allowed people to be their authentic selves, and just get work done whenever they want to get it, whenever they can get it done, as long as they're getting it done. And so, to me, people talk about this great resignation. You don't have to worry about that great resignation if people buy into what you're doing and believe in what you do
mm.
and feel like they're part of a family. They won't leave.
Wow.
So that's the one I'm more excited to lean into more and more and more with this group here moving forward, and hire more people along those lines.
Yeah, gosh. Oh my gosh. So inspiring, my friend. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for how you're really changing the game in sales, because you know this, it's not just about sales, it's about people's full lives and
Yeah,
changing the
totally.
trajectory of their lives. So this has been
So,
amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
thanks so much for having me, Lisa. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And for you, my friend, my listener, connect with John. Check out his new website. Check him out on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram. He's just, I think, a true, authentic leader in our space, and someone who I'm excited to keep learning from, and just have been blessed by today. So thank you, as always, for being a listener of She Sells Radio. Super grateful for you. And I'll see you next week on our next episode. Bye for now.